Hello and welcome to Take Six. I'm streaming executive producer Thomas Mates, filling in for Julie Broughton. She's actually going to be joining us in just a few minutes with your forecast, but she had to do the noon show today, so we didn't want her, twisted an ankle, running off set just to come out here to the newsroom. So I'll be filling in for her. We've got a few things going on today, the biggest of which is the Crew 10 space launch. The weather is looking good so far. Right now, we've got the rocket out there on the pad, a Falcon 9 rocket with the Crew Dragon space capsule sitting on top of it. To tell us a little bit more about the mission and everything that's going into this, we're joined now by our Space Coast reporter, James Sparvero. James, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, Thomas. Great to see you today.
Good to see you, too. Now, you're getting geared up right now. We're actually catching you at home before you head out the door because it's going to be a little bit of a late evening for you for this launch. This is a big launch for a couple reasons. Of course, it's always big when they're sending up people on top of an explosion heading towards the International Space Station. But this is also going to mark the return of Butch and Sunny, the Starliner crew. Can you walk us through a little bit how we got to today?
Right. So from the astronauts' perspective, it is just another crew rotation. And of course, with human spaceflight, nobody wants to sound complacent around here. But that's their mission at hand. Every 6 months for the last 5 years now, NASA and SpaceX together have sent up a crew of 2 to 4 astronauts. Now, you remember we have to go back to last summer, how we got here with this particular mission and the extra implications. The Starliner spacecraft from Boeing, which was supposed to be the rival to the SpaceX Dragon. It had its problems even before people were put on it. And then when Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams launched, new problems popped up. So they launched in June. I was there at the Space Center then. They were only supposed to go to the space station for a week or two on a test mission. It's turned into all these months later. And over the summer, NASA had to make that difficult decision not to bring Butch and Sunny back on Starliner, just because they didn't want to take the risk. Too many unknowns, too many uncertainties. So they left the veteran astronauts on the space station, where they have spent regular, longer duration missions before. So this wasn't foreign to them. They had not planned for it, but they say they were prepared just in case. So over all these months, they have been conducting the regular work of astronauts on a regular duration mission to the station. That's the maintenance that goes into the space station. That's the science and the research. And to make room for them to come home now, back in September with the Crew 9 launch, NASA and SpaceX had to take 2 crew members off of that Dragon so that there would be empty seats for Butch and Sunny coming back now. So Butch and Sunny unexpectedly became part of the Crew 9 mission. And now, once the Crew 10 mission takes off, a couple of days after that, once you have the new rotation of astronauts getting comfortable and picking up the work where it left off, Butch and Sunny can then come home on that SpaceX capsule that launched back in September. So that's how we got to this point.
Yeah, and this is, as you said, a long time coming, not completely unprepared for, but certainly unplanned. You've been hearing kind of a bit of mixed messaging on that. Some people saying that Butch and Sunny have been stuck, but they've been, steadfast in saying that they are comfortable with this. They have been more than okay with staying up in space for this extended period of time, even though it wasn't the intention. It is something that they are, they're mission aware, and they're confident that they'll be able to be useful to the mission of the International Space Station while they're up there.
They've been complete professionals, and what else would you expect? So they can only control what's in their control, and that's their tasks at hand. So even before Starliner took off, because as I mentioned, we knew it had technical problems for years leading up to their mission. That was the story. Is the spacecraft safe to take astronauts to the space station? But they've given the same answers. They gave the same answers to me a year ago before they took off when I asked, why do you think the spacecraft is as safe as possible? And they said, we wouldn't be here if it weren't. And then when things changed and suddenly they had a longer mission than expected, they're still kind of repeating that same narrative. Here's what we can do about it. It makes no sense to complain about it. It's outside our control. We're comfortable with whatever the decision makers ask us to do. In the press conference a week ago, we got to talk to Butch Wilmore one more time and Sunny Williams one more time. And they said over the summer last year, had NASA made the call to bring them home on Starliner, they would have happily done it. And ultimately, Starliner did come home safely without the crew.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, we have no idea if that spacecraft is going to be flying again with astronauts or when that could possibly be. But I like looking at this video right here because it's some of their happier moments throughout these past months. Yeah, they had to miss the holidays with their families. That was difficult. But these are two veteran astronauts who love doing what they do. They love going to space. And in that same press conference a week ago, when they were asked, has this changed your opinion? Would you ever go to space again after what's happened? They were kind of joking and they said, yeah, we're going to the moon next. We're going to Mars. Who's coming with us? That sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what they train for, and even, so few astronauts up until, relatively recently had gotten to go to space, period. So to give them that, so they're, I'm sure, more than happy to have the opportunity. And so speaking of the next round of astronaut, the next crew rotation, could you give us a little bit of an idea of the makeup of this next round, the Crew 10 mission, the 4 astronauts who are heading up there today?
Absolutely. So it will be 4 astronauts. Like usual, the Crew 9 launch was the exception, as I mentioned, because they had to remove 2 of the crew members off the Dragon to make room for Butch and Sunny to come home. But now they're getting back to the regular crews of 4. So you have 2 NASA astronauts on board. That's going to be Commander Anne McClain. She's been to space before. And the pilot's Nicole Ayers, also from NASA. She's a first-time space flyer. And then you have 2 other crew members, one from Japan and one from Russia. They often share seats with other countries on these missions. NASA loves to talk about how international the International Space Station truly is, along with the entire commercial crew program and the moon program too, if you want to get into that. They love talking about the international partnerships that they have. So Anne McClain, the commander, she told a great story when the crew touched down here at the Space Center back on Friday. She talked about how 6 years ago, it was only 6 years ago, that the Crew Dragon launched to the space station on its test flight without a crew. And when it got there, she was on board the space station at that time. And she was one of the first astronauts who got to go inside a Dragon capsule while it was docked to the space station in space. And she talked about thinking, wow, it'll just be another matter of time before there's actually crew members on board launching here on these spacecrafts. And it would be just 1 year later in 2020. When Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley were the first SpaceX Dragon astronaut. So she's very excited. She gave a very inspiring speech, I thought, about the whole purpose of the International Space Station and the science and research and how it benefits us here on Earth. And she called it a mission for all of humanity, not just the astronauts. She said everything we learn, everything we do, it's shared with the entire world. And they gave so many examples over the last 25 years as the space station has been continuously operated with astronauts, how their work has benefited us every day, from tracking storms to our GPS and our phones. I mean, there's science and research, people who are battling cancer and other diseases, all the experiments they do that can benefit there. And she also got asked about Butch and Sunny, of course, as you might imagine. Of course, this is a bigger launch for the headlines, not only just because it's crewed, but because of the circumstances last year in bringing Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams home. And she sounded a lot like them. She talked about how our task primarily is going to the space station to be another crew rotation, to continue to do the work on orbit as has been done for 25 years. And then, yes, we have 2 astronauts there that are going to get a ride home once we go there. But they assimilated, they adapted, they became part of the Crew 9 mission just like any other crew members had been before. So they're going to launch, and then they're going to do the traditional handover ceremony. And it's only going to be a couple of days this time, or at least NASA hopes, that then they can bring back Crew 9 with Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams. It always depends on what the weather's like, where they want to splash them down. So they can tell us now it'll be a couple of days, but in a couple of days you get a forecast, and it could end up being days later after that. But it should be within just a few days or a week when they pick that target date, when they'll splash them down, bring them back, and then everybody can celebrate.
Yeah, we're all looking forward to watching that launch night set for 7:48 if everything goes as planned. But as we've been saying, weather is looking pretty good. I think it's about a 95% chance of go, according to the 45th Space Wing. and of course our own Pinpoint Weather team. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. I don't want to keep you much longer because I know you got to get out the door eventually to get out to the Kennedy Space Center to get your spot and everything, all your credentials. So James, I really appreciate your time and your expertise on all this, and we look forward to seeing more of your reports this afternoon on News 6.
Hey, thank you, Thomas. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the launch.
Yes, thank you so much, James. Of course, the Space Coast is going to be a buzz of people ready for this launch, and businesses are really able to cash in on this as all the tourists come in from across the state and across the country and even the world to view this launch. News 6's Mark Lehman spoke with some of the business leaders out there about how this is benefiting them.
Business owners tell us launches like this always bring in extra foot traffic. They're expecting it here in Titusville today as we get closer to launch time, and all of this is also happening as spring break is getting underway.
Yeah, it's exciting. This place will be packed.
Terry Smith is joining dozens of other campers in Jetty Park, and they're all looking forward to tonight's Crew 10 launch. A big turnout is expected as 4 astronauts will be going to the International Space Station.
Especially important because of the people on board, the astronauts, and mission that they are going to try to accomplish, bringing back the other ones.
The mission paving the way for a return home for Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. The 2 astronauts have been on the ISS since June when their Boeing Starliner capsule malfunctioned. With the extra attention on this launch, the Space Coast could see a boost in tourism.
There's some, young kids out here, and they're on spring break and they're enjoying themselves.
David Lane is also staying in the park and says he's already seen extra people on the beaches for spring break. With this launch bringing even more into town, businesses in Brevard County could get a boost to their bottom line.
It's great for the economy, and yeah, you guys live down here, so you see it all the time. It's just growing, isn't it?
And things are only expected to get busier throughout the day. At this point, everything is looking good for liftoff, which is set for 7:48 tonight. If it happens, you can watch it live on News 6, clickorlando.com, and our News 6 Plus streaming platform. In Titusville, Mark Lehman getting results, News 6.
All right, we will be carrying that live here on News 6 Plus and clickorlando.com, and of course our News 6 YouTube page of all sorts of platforms you can watch us on. News 6 anchor Ginger Gadsden's going to be out there field anchoring for us. James Sparvero will be there providing coverage as well. And when the rocket launches, whenever that happens to be, if it's tonight or if it gets pushed back, we will carry it for you live. Right now, we are going to take a quick commercial break, but let's take a look at the rocket out there on the pad right now at Kennedy Space Center. That'll be lifting off again at 7:48 tonight. We'll be back in just about 2 minutes. Mic check, please.
Hello, hello, hello.
Okay, we're in good shape.
Okay.
All right, see you in a couple
Do I
minutes.
adjust this camera or do you adjust it?
You would adjust it.
Is there
Yeah.
a manual thing or do I? Is there
Give me 1 second. I'll come back there and help you real quick.
okay, let me just.
Welcome back to Take 6. The time now is 12:46. We'll be getting a check on your forecast with Julie Broughton in just a moment. She was filling in for Chief Meteorologist Candace Campos on the noon, so she'll be joining us for weather in just a few minutes. You were just looking at the launch pad. Excuse me, I'm a little out of breath. I apologize. You're just looking at the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center, where a Falcon 9 rocket with a Crew Dragon space capsule is sitting on top of it, waiting for the Crew 10 mission launch tonight. That is set for 7:48 p.m., and we will be carrying that live right here on News 6 Plus. In the meantime, first we want to get a check on our normal Wednesday feature, Protecting Our Communities, with News 6 anchor Eric Von Aken. He is looking at a program in Flagler County that is being credited with reducing recidivism and reducing the jail population.
We are inside the Flagler County Jail with the person who runs the jail. This is Chief Dan Engert. Chief, we are in a pod that you call SMART.
Successful mental health and addiction recovery treatment.
Okay, this is the ladies' pod. Those are the ladies who are recovering. We'll talk more about them in a second. But first, the results. The jail population, you were saying, has dropped over the last several years by a third?
Close to it.
Chief, you believe the reason for that reduction is largely because of what you've been doing here with SMART.
I do. I believe that this has had a real big impact on our recidivism rates and reducing our population. Good morning, guys.
Okay, so SMART is men living with men, and women in this case living with women, in their own separate pods.
And then they get, intense programming Monday through Friday by our, intervention specialists, our peer counselors.
Chief, since you started this, you have graduated almost 200 people from this program.
Yeah, 174 to be exact, yep.
You've also studied what the results have been down to the percentage.
And the study was done by two professors from the University of North Florida.
What did they find?
18% less likely to be rearrested for any charge, and 51% less likely to be rearrested on a new charge.
The national rate is something like 75 to 80% chance
Yes.
that you're going to end up back here.
Yes.
So these folks, you're giving them an extra 25% chance to make it.
That's correct.
And you believe it's because what you're doing here in the jail, not just the SMART program, but we've also profiled things like the cooking program.
Go like this.
The electrical training program.
You just hook it up, turn it, and it pulls itself.
We've really, changed the culture of the jail to go from a simple warehousing of individuals to really actively providing opportunities for them to improve themselves. Our motto is improved inmate outcomes, improves our community. And this is over a 3-year period. They're staying fairly consistent, so it's working.
And the chief tells me another way this jail is getting results. 2 years ago, they hired a medical management company. So anyone who gets sick inside the jail and needs medical care, this company has negotiated rates, and they also monitor the billing to make sure it's accurate. Chief says before they used this company, nobody was checking. He says for the second year in a row, this company has saved more than $1 million per year in taxpayer money. Protecting our community in Flagler County. Eric Von Aken getting results. News 6.
That is some really incredible stuff. Eric's going to have much more on that coming up today on News 6 at 5. And, of course, you can read his story right now on clickorlando.com. So now let's get a check on that all-important forecast. It's going to be a big deal for those astronauts tonight heading up on that rocket towards the International Space Station. We're joined now by meteorologist Julie Broughton. Julie, thank you for joining us and being on this side of Take 6. Yeah. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And, you mentioned that you were out of breath earlier. That's because you had to run back here during the break. You fixed something that I'm certain that I've broken in the weather office.
No.
You were successful. So,
yes.
So it's
yes.
my fault that you had to run back and forth.
We can see and hear you. That's the important part. I could use the exercise for certain. So, Julie... Sorry, go on. I was going to say, the forecast is looking pretty good at the moment, and those astronauts should have some clear skies, provided nothing else goes wrong, correct?
Yeah, I think we are in great shape, certainly for our weather here in our area. And if you've been outside today, so much sunshine, it really feels comfortable, and temperatures are in the low 70s. Let's go ahead and take a live look outside. This is what's happening right now. This is our Launch Credit Union camera out there in Port Canaveral, and you can see that gorgeous sunshine where right now we are sitting at 71 degrees. Relative humidity fairly low for us, so that's why it does feel comfortable out there today. Elsewhere, we're still sitting at 69 in Claremont. If you're in Orlando, you're at 71. It is 70 in Ocala and 73 in Palm Coast. This is what everyone has been looking for. This is our launch forecast. Now, launch is set for 7:46 tonight. As of right now, if there is an issue with this launch, it likely will not be because of weather on our coast. We're looking at no violation concerns here in our area. However, especially when we're talking about a crewed launch, the forecasters there, they look at conditions all along that recovery path. So as we take you over the North Atlantic, really from about between Ireland and Newfoundland, that's when you'll notice those wave heights around 12 to 14 feet. That means if there were to be some sort of unforeseen emergency and the astronauts would have to abort this mission, it might be difficult for recovery crews to be able to get to them with those ocean conditions. So as far as weather, that really, I think, is kind of the only fly in the ointment with the forecast for today. And as we said, that is not in our area. Now, here's what you can expect as we move toward the weekend in your weather headlines. We will be near 90 by the weekend. Our next front and also our next chance of rain doesn't arrive until late on Sunday. And that means next week will be a little bit cooler than normal as we start things out. Now, talking about those temperatures near 90, we are going to be flirting with some records on Sunday. I think Leesburg likely has the best chance of tying or setting a record. Your forecast high is 87. Your record was set in 2020. That is 88 degrees. Now, the winds are looking a whole lot better than they were the last few days. Even yesterday, we were still seeing winds gusting at times close to 30 miles per hour. Winds are pretty calm in most spots. So we have that nice big ridge of high pressure and also high pressure at the surface moving out of the Gulf. That is keeping things quiet for us. That's keeping our winds light. And way back to our west over Texas, you see that will be our next system that will bring us that chance of rain. That doesn't come until late on Sunday. So for today, taking you into the evening hours, clear skies, dry conditions, light winds, really looking good out there. So today we'll go to a high of 79, which is right in that normal range. Overnight, low 50s, back up to 80 degrees tomorrow. Again, overnight Thursday into Friday. That's when, if you're going to be up, between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, you'll have the opportunity to view the total lunar eclipse. We'll talk more about that on News 6 at 4. 83 on Friday, and then in the upper 80s this weekend. Expect, again, potentially a wet Monday morning drive for your St. Patrick's Day with highs Monday and Tuesday in the mid-70s. Of course, we will break all of this down in detail starting on News 6 at 4 o'clock this afternoon. A lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good. I'm not super psyched about those near 90s, but it's Florida. It had to happen sooner or later, right?
And we are so close to seeing 90s all the time. But, I think a lot of people may be visiting us for spring break will maybe enjoy the warm weather, especially if they're coming from up north.
Of course, we've got to think about the tourists here. It's not all about us.
That's right. We can't be selfish. We get to live here 365 days a year.
Yes. All right. Well, Julie, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. We'll see you again coming up on News 6 at 4.
Okay.
All right. And that'll do it for us today here on Take 6. We appreciate all of you joining us. Thank you for your time. And of course, like I said, we'll be back on News 6 at 4 with all your weather and headlines. And of course, be sure to join us tonight at 7:48 for the launch of the Crew 10 mission from Kennedy Space Center on the Space Coast. It is going to be quite the sight. An evening launch always provides a great dark background for those big jets to go off, and you won't want to miss it. Of course, if anything changes or anything happens, we'll keep you updated on clickorlando.com. Thank you again for your time, and have a pleasant day.